What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today, going to be going over some of the transfers, and the big here we go that we got today was Barcelona will be signing Marcus Rashford on loan with an option to buy, including 100% wage coverage by Barcelona. So, isn't official yet, but we got the here we go from Fabrizio, and I think this is a good deal for Barca. I think I think he's on a similar level to Luis Diaz, who was the other option, obviously. I think Nico Williams is better than both of them, but obviously he's unattainable now. But I think this is a way better value for money for Rashford, someone who can play. He can play the 9, he can play off the left. You can move Rafinha into the 10, which I think is what they're looking at doing. That's why they were going to bring in Nico. But I think this is a good deal for Barca. I think he's a good player. I think he'll be good in Champions League games. When Rafinha isn't playing too well and you just need someone to come in for him, I think it's a good deal. I think in that Inter game, especially at the end in extra time, he just looked sluggish. He looked like his legs were completely gone. He was dropping way too deep. He wasn't getting forward, and you saw Yamal just running up and down, taking people on, still having a shot. So I think they really did need a depth in the wing positions. Someone obviously other than Ferran Torres and no one else really. Dani Olmo could play out on the wings, but I think this is a good deal for Barca. I think for United, this is all right because you do get 100% of the wages off your books. That's 325k pounds a week, but you only got an option to buy for Rashford. You didn't get a obligation to. So there's no guarantee that Barca will buy him, and I think it's a little more like if he doesn't perform, they're not going to want to buy him. If he's not going to lower his wages, Barca can't afford him, and depending on what the fee is, because it hasn't been disclosed, it might not even be worth it. If it's 40 million, all right, if he's willing to drop his wages, but it might not make sense financially. So I think for United, it's good to get him off the books, but it just delays this deal by another year. He still has his contract is until 2028, so it's not like you're getting this money off your books anytime soon. Like even if he left on a free, it would be better than still paying him all this ridiculous money for the next couple of years. But I think United are just struggling with deals. I mean, they did get the here we go for Mbeumo. He is going to do his medicals, but they overpaid for him a little bit. And I'm not saying that Mbeumo isn't a quality player, but Brentford valued him at 70 million. United got 65 plus 6 in add-on, so £1 million more than what their bid was. And I do hear that the add-ons are pretty difficult to get, like getting top 4 and other team goals. Not something Mbeumo can really hit on his own. But I don't think this United team is going to be good enough to qualify for Champions League or finish in the top 4 with all the other teams improving. So if they do, they overpay. And if they paid, their first bid was 45 million plus 10 million in add-ons, which is a huge undersell on what Brentford wanted. And then the second one of 55 plus 7.5 was around what they paid for Cunha with the add-ons, but that's not what Brentford wanted, and this just dragged out the saga for so long. If Brentford were hard set on the 70 million price, and you just end up paying that price after over a month and a half of negotiating, then what are you guys really doing? Why are you took attention away from other signings, outgoings, and I'm sure they're juggling multiple deals at once, but it felt like this kind of just logjam their summer. They don't know how much they're going to pay for him. Because that 20 million pounds is a big difference on what you can buy and what can't you buy. Because they're talking about going for another keeper. Or Emi Martinez has talked about going to them, but they're sticking with Onana because they still have Binder and Onana on the books. They would only get one if one of them leaves. But 20 million pounds, that's the price of a goalkeeper. That could be majority, if not all, of Emi Martinez's transfer fee if he was to go to United, or whoever they choose to go on goal, because I think they need someone else other than Onana. So it's good to sort that deal out. You did overpay a little bit, not saying you didn't get a quality player, and now you get some of the wages off for Rashford, but you kind of wanted that transfer fee so you get an influx of money that you can actually use on other signings, especially because United don't have European football. They don't have the same type of money that an Arsenal, a Chelsea, a City, a Liverpool, or even a Newcastle has. Even though they have PSR problems, they at least have the Champions League money that will come in from how far, and they go far in the competition. United don't. They just have, they have to focus on the Prem mainly because that's the biggest source of money for them is getting back into Europe. Getting a cup, like a Carabao Cup and an FA Cup, is great, but that's not going to fix their financial problems. And I know the game's about winning. You got to win trophies, but this United team needs more than just trophies because they've picked up cups over the last couple of years, and this team has regressed. A couple of years ago, they finished second, and they didn't push on from there. And that team, I think, was kind of lucky to get in that place, but I think United are digging themselves a hole, and they're not really setting themselves up to get out of it. They're getting linked with Benjamin Šeško, who I don't think they can afford, especially after they're not getting any money from Rashford. They're not. How much are they going to sell Garnacho for? Are they the Juve deal with Sancho seems pretty good, especially because they have the 5 million from Chelsea, but they still have money to pay off on Sancho. He's not profit the same way that Rashford is or would be, because he's an academy kid, or other players whose transfer fees are fully paid off already. So, and you can't even get rid of someone like Onana because he's hurt now. He's not going to pass a medical. So I can feel for a lot of United fans. Obviously, I don't want to see United. I like seeing United suffer, but this is just it's a confusing time. I think not getting an obligation to buy on Rashford is a big miss, but getting his wages off is a win. So it's kind of whatever. It's kind of just like this weird middle ground that you're just going to have the same saga next summer, and they still don't have a lot of suitors for Garnacho, even though they value him at 70 million was the price they slapped on him, which I think is ridiculous. But you do have to, with people like Madueke going for 50, I think you could say, give us 70. All right, we'll give you 50. Deal, done deal. Goodbye. But yeah, moving on from Rashford, Barcelona obviously were linked with another winger, Luis Diaz, who is pushing for a move, and it now seems like Bayern is gonna push to make another bid, according to Fabrizio, and I think it's not a good move for Bayern. I think he's a good player. I think they do desperately need a left winger, but it seems like he's going to cost around 80 million. And I don't think that's good value for money. I don't think he's good at 80 million. I know his wages aren't that much at Liverpool. I think he's on like 60 or 70,000. But going to Bayern, they'll probably put him on 100 plus 100, maybe 150,000. And he's going to be their left wing signing. I don't get why they would do that when someone like Rodrygo seems like he's about to come onto the market. There's rumors that he's in two minds. He wants to stay at Madrid and feels like he could provide more, but he's kind of interested in being a star somewhere else on the left wing. And Bayern, what other team offers as much as Bayern? They are a European juggernaut. They win the league almost every year. I mean, you play less games in the league. A bunch of players are complaining they play too many games. Go to a league where you play 4 less games a year, and you're guaranteed a starting spot along with Kane, who's a proven goal scorer, and Michael Olise, who's one of probably the 5 best right wingers in the world right now. Obviously, they lost out on Musiala. He will come back later in the season, probably around the best time. Honestly, they'll be in the Champions League knockout stages by then. They'll probably be ahead in the league, so he probably won't even be playing that many league games, just getting rotated. They brought in Jonathan Tah to solidify the defense, and they're still Bayern Munich at the end of the day. They're still a great team, but I think Luis Diaz is kind of the wrong direction to go if this is what they're gonna finalize. Maybe Rodrygo, or they have information behind the scenes that Rodrygo won't come to them, and there's no one else that really wants to go, and he's really pushing for the move Diaz, and maybe it makes sense. But I see Lookman going to Inter Milan for 40 million. I think he's as good, if not better, provides more options in the attack for Bayern, and is a greater value for money. But maybe he just wants to stay in Italy. That's why he's going to Inter. But that's also another good deal on the market. So what this means for Liverpool is that I think they're going to end up with Rodrygo. It seems like Eddie Howe came out today and said that Isak isn't 100%. He can't 100% say that he'll stay, but he expects him to be here at the start of the season. Which, I mean, the start of the season's in August. That's not deadline. Deadline day is a little ways into the season, so who knows. But I think Liverpool will probably end up with Ekitike now. I think financially that will open them up, less wages, smaller transfer fee to go out and splash that money on a Rodrygo who wants around 300K weekly, and I think Liverpool they do have one of the higher wage bills in the Prem, surprisingly, even though people talk about them like they don't spend money, and they obviously have the money to spend with. Seems like Nunez being an outgoing Diaz. If they get 80 million for him, that's like a one. That's a 1-for-1. Even though it would be profit because they're gonna pay probably 20 million this fiscal year for Rodrygo, and obviously pay the rest off over time. So I think that's the best destination for him. They're coming off a league title. They brought in Verts, who's a great creator, so it's gonna give Rodrygo more chances in front of goal. You have Mo Salah, you have Van Dijk and Allison still. You have, along with Verts, you have McAllister, Szoboszlai, Gravenberch. You have Kirkez, who's going to be backing you up on the wings. You have Frimpong, who's going to be flying up and down the right side. I think this is my Premier League favorites. And if they add Rodrygo, they are moving up another level. Like the same, I think they're moving up to the same level as if they just got Isak. But Ekitike, if he pans out, and Rodrygo makes their squad better because they do need a striker, especially if they're getting rid of Nunez. They need to improve on the left wing because Gakpo and Diaz are great, but I don't think they're what you want, especially going into the future where you could see a regression from Mo Salah, even though I don't think you will see that. I think he's not going to put up the same numbers as last year. Doesn't mean he won't be as good. So you have to bring in someone that will provide GA, and I know Rodrygo doesn't have the best GA on paper, but this guy's been played out of position. If you look at his left wing GA, it's like night and day. So I think this would be an amazing signing. He'd be the best left winger in the league for me. They're also getting linked with Anthony Gordon, who was someone they've been talked about getting for a long time, and I also think that would be a really good move. I don't think he's as good as Rodrygo, but he's Premier League proven. He's someone that I didn't really rate when he first went to Newcastle, but I think he's really shown how talented he is. And Newcastle obviously won't be easy to get him out of there, and he probably won't. I think they'll probably just end up with Rodrygo because it'll surprisingly be an easier deal to get done if Rodrygo wants to leave. And I think that either way, you're going to see a huge improvement from this Liverpool attack. I think they still need a striker. I still think they need depth in defense. It seems like they're going to lose out on Konate unless they can convince him to sign another year on his deal, or they just sell him outright. They need to bring in Gahey, which that deal is kind of stalled. I don't know what's going on with it. I think Crystal Palace is still trying to sort out whether or not they're going to be in Europa or in the Conference League, which is obviously it's a good difference in money, and it could mean a difference in price valuation for not as much Gahey, but more Eze, because he has the release clause, and Gahey only has a year left on his contract, or I think he has 2 years maybe. But he said he's not going to re-sign, so they kind of need to offload him now while they can still get good value for him. But I don't know if he wants to go to Liverpool because he's not going to get guaranteed starts. He'll get a good amount of games. I think he'll play probably around 30 to 35 games. Probably maybe even start 30 games next season with Konate's injury history and with wanting to rotate Van Dijk because of his age. But it's not a guarantee. If Konate stays as healthy as he's been the last 2 years, then you're not going to play because I don't think he's a better player than Konate. So I think Liverpool need to sort out other positions outside of the attack. They need depth in this team. That's the biggest weakness in this team. The starting 11 is going to be phenomenal. If they get Rodrygo, they get Ekitike, their starting 11 is the best starting 11, in my opinion, in the Prem. But you look at their bench options, they have decent attacking options. You would have Gakpo, Chiesa, and Elliott can play off the right wing. But you have no one that could play down the middle unless you play Gakpo there, who's not a traditional 9, but he can play there and he can do a good job. But that's still only 6 attackers. That's the same issue we saw with Arsenal last year, where the drop in quality on their bench, and then if one of those players gets injured, it can be devastating for your team. And you could play Verts as a false 9. I see a lot of people saying that, or play him off the left or whatever. I wouldn't do that. I don't think it's good to put these players out of position. So midfield depth is pretty good. You have 1-for-1 in every position. But the defense, who's their backup center backs? Joe Gomez, who's injury riddled. Connor Bradley's good in him and Frimpong. You have Robertson, Tsimikas, Kirkez at left back. But it's the center backs that is really the issue for me. So to wrap it up, Rodrygo, I think, is going to end up at Liverpool now that it seems that Luis Diaz isn't going to Barca and is primary target for Bayern. Marcus Rashford to Barca. Good move for Barca. Good loan deal. A lot of money on his wages, but if he performs, it'll all be worth it. add some depth into the attack, which they really needed last year, even though they were one of the best attacking teams in the world. And Man United just need to get a move on. They drew today against Leeds, which isn't the end of the world. It's a preseason game, but get Mbeumo in, get a midfielder, maybe a defender, and sort out what you're doing with the number 9. Don't go splash 90 million on Sesko because you're just gonna fist yourself long term, especially if he doesn't pan out. I'll see you guys in the next one.